Hello and welcome back to the Fighting Talk 2 podcast with myself, Mr. Fighting Talk, aka Connor, joined as always by the fantastic co-host of the show. Thank you very much for joining us as always, George, the funny casual, and Prath, the eloquent analyst. I need to say it extremely slowly, otherwise it sounds like I'm just saying loads of anal. Thank you very much to the special guest for the show as well, Suga C. Thank you very much for joining us again. We're going to break down this card, but how is everyone doing? All good?
All good, thank you.
Good to hear.
Doing good, guys.
Good. Suga, how you doing, bud?
Oh, Connor, you know me. As long as there's a fight card, Suga C is doing good.
That's it. That's it. And this is a bit of a strange card because there's not a load of names. We were talking about this before we hit record, and it's kind of, there's a big name versus a not so well name. There's a big name versus a not so, well-known name. So I think this will be a card that a lot of the casuals will be sleeping on, but I'll be up for it. I'll be up, I'll be watching it, and I will be glued in from start to finish. George will catch the back end of it, I'm sure. But the ones we're going to get into are just kind of like the main talking points for the card, the Aspinalls, the Hors, the Oleniks and stuff like that. But Shug, you're going to break down a card for us, man, or one of the fights. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, do you know what? A good fight I've got that we've got sort of open up the card. We've got Sergey Spivak versus Jared Vanderaa. Now, Sergey Spivak has looked really good in the UFC so far. He obviously had that knockout loss to Walt Harris, but after that comeback looked really sort of good and just dismantled Tai Tuivasa with a really great game plan, taking him down, grinding him out. After that, he got matched up with Marcin Tybura, who, if I'm honest, is Sergey Spivak, but just that little bit better. Beat him at his own sort of game in that way, and then came out against Carlos Felipe, who a fighter I love to see fight. I love fighters that stand in the middle, like to talk to you, and again came out first round, lost that round, but then came out with a great game plan, won that fight. Now he's facing Jared Vanderaa, who's coming into the UFC here. Now Jared Vanderaa, very, very sort of big guy, stands at 6'4", very large reach, but he's now coming up into that upper echelon. Now, the way I see this fight going, Jared's going to sort of throw that overhand and throw these powerful leg kicks that he's always got. And it depends on whose game plan is going to work here. If I'm totally honest, I'm leaning towards Sergey Spivak because it's a bit of a wrestler, it's that striker versus grappler dynamic. And if you look at the way that Vanderaa has lost so far, he's lost by an arm triangle choke, and he's lost a couple of decisions as well. That leans into Sergey Spivak's sort of wheelhouse. I'm going to go for third round submission for Sergey Spivak as he maybe sort of grinds it out. Do you guys see this fight going? You got this at all?
I don't know, man. A few of the names you just mentioned there, the Tai Tuivasas, the Carlos Felipes and stuff like that, they're kind of people that they come in and out of the heavyweight division and they get kind of dropped and then they'll get signed again, then they'll get dropped. So it's like the only real kind of solid name there is obviously Tybura, but it just depends how whoever gets to implement their game plan first, as you know, Prath, we always like to say, whoever gets to go out there and really dominate. But you never know in that kind of division. People are going to be throwing hands. People are going to be throwing hands early. So it's really just, we can just see flash knockouts in the heavyweight division. You just don't know when it's going to come and that kind of stuff, you know. But no, I'm with you. I think it'll be a good fight, and it'll be a good opener to the card as well.
Heavyweight fights go one of two ways, either a quick knockout or a really boring decision. Let's hope it's a quick knockout or a submission.
And I picked the third. I went for the submission.
Yeah.
No, I think it'll be good. And there is actually three heavyweight fights on this card, isn't there? Obviously, we've got Aspinall versus Arlovski. And Arlovski is obviously very, very well known in the MMA community because he has been in the MMA game for such a long time. I think I posted a video on Twitter the other day, and it was like 15, 20 years ago that this guy was fighting. He had a skinhead, and he was just, really going for it and throwing hands. But obviously later on in his career, he's really been grinding out the decisions, and Tom Aspinall is an up-and-comer as well. But George, how do you see that fight going? Because you're pretty high on Aspinall, right?
Yeah, definitely. Cage Warriors champion, come over to the UFC and is currently unbeaten in the UFC. And in his two fights so far, he's finished both of his guys in the first round in under 2 minutes. So, it's been a pretty decent start for the Scouser. So, but I mean, Arlovski is obviously a very experienced veteran. I think it's his 33rd fight in the UFC. This will be, which is madness. But obviously he has lost a fair amount recently, but he's obviously 2-0 last year, I think he was. So, you know, he's had a couple of wins, but I mean, we were literally just saying about how like heavyweight fights either get like finished early doors or they go to a decision. And I'm expecting, I fancy Tom Aspinall to finish his early doors again, to be honest. I think it's a big step up fight this for Tom Aspinall, but I've seen a lot from him to think that he's actually got a bit of pedigree and he could be quite a good prospect in the UFC, an English prospect in the UFC at heavyweight. So yeah, no, we'll see. But no, I'm going to take Aspinall. I'm going to really back him, and I'm going to see him get a first round finish again here, hopefully.
No, I'm with you, man. Obviously, Arlovski having 19 losses, and I didn't break down how many of those came through him getting TKO'd or KO'd, but you can't imagine his chin is going to be standing up to the power of these kind of young heavyweight fighters coming through. Prath, what do you think? Because I've heard a lot about Aspinall doing some stuff that there's no other heavyweights doing out there with regards to what he's doing on the mats and how he's moving, how his flow is. How do you see that going, bud?
Yeah, Andrei Arlovski is a veteran of the game, a crafty veteran of the game as well. What you've kind of seen in the last little kind of couple of years of Andrei Arlovski fighting is that he's had to really adjust to his ability to not really take that big shot anymore. And so what you see now is a lot of decision wins coming out of Arlovski, or decision losses. And that's because he's a grinder and he's a tough guy as well. So it's always going to be, I think Arlovski against anyone in the heavyweight division is a tough fight. You know, normally we look at the veterans and we say that they're past their prime and that they are susceptible to getting knocked out. And I think Arlovski and Overeem have done really, really good jobs at really adjusting their games to be less hittable and to kind of cruise out some of these decisions and really show off their technical side as well. And I think that's the kind of thing that you've kind of seen with the, you know, the older generation heavyweights, is that they've kind of allowed themselves to become more technical by employing better head movement, employing better striking defense, and having more of a distance. And Arlovski's a massive guy, so one thing I've always wondered about Arlovski is why he never really managed his distance the way that other guys of that kind of height and stature do. So that's my kind of piece on Andrei Arlovski, saying that Tom Aspinall coming off of 2 kind of quick TKO wins. You know, I think this is kind of like they've put Andrei Arlovski on the platter here, and they're hoping that Tom Aspinall can get the dub here. But, you know, the other thing you can never really account for is that mixed martial arts is a crazy sport. So I've seen crazier things in my time than Arlovski knocking Tom Aspinall out. But the way that the rhetoric has kind of been laid out in front of us, we should expect kind of a quick win here from Tom Aspinall. Mm-hmm. If not, I would expect him to take the decision, but also learn a lot from that. Because I think those are the really important things to take away. When you're fighting a veteran, you go to a decision, you learn a lot. I think Tai Tuivasa was saying about his fight with Arlovski, he learned so much from it because that was a really tough decision, very close fight, back and forth all the way through. So it's either going to be, again, very, very quick, or it's going to be a very, you know, meaningful decision in the sense that they will both take a lot away from it.
Yeah, definitely. And another person who's used to these quick decisions is obviously on the same card is Phil Hawes. The guy comes out, and we've seen him twice. His last 2 fights, he's come out and got it done inside the first round. And he's facing obviously a very, very tough opponent in Nasruddin Imavov. I think that's going to be a fantastic fight on the card as well. I think it's either going to go one or 2 ways. Either Hawes is going to come out there and start throwing absolute bombs in hands, or Imavov is going to be able to, as Suga said before the show, get him out of that Rodolfo kind of first round, and then all of a sudden he's going to have no gas tank. But I think Phil Hawes is definitely going to put some pressure on early. Suga, how do you see that? Sorry, go on.
Just a quick little thing about Phil Hawes before Suga jumps in that I just want to kind of cover about Phil Hawes is that Phil Hawes has always been a massively top prospect. Mm-hmm. He has been one of the bigger prospects to come out of that Albuquerque camp. And he has always been kind of regarded in the same way that you look at featherweight Mirsad Bektik. I remember when he was training out of ATT, he was the phenom, he was the future. And I feel like a lot of people felt that way about Phil Hawes, and he's had a lot of opportunities to get to that UFC contract and has fallen short before in the past. But I think he really learned from those losses on Dana White's Contender Series. learned from those, bounced back from it, and now he is just a much more intelligent fighter. When he was walking into punches on those early Contender Series fights. So yeah, just something I wanted to throw in, because I do like Phil Hawes is such a recognizable name to me, because he's been one of those guys for over the years that they really wanted to be a top prospect, and then they get him the fight and then he just doesn't get it done. And I don't know if that's like a plateau of the mind, or is that a plateau of the skill against, the other person? Is the other person coming in just that much better? We don't know. So I think I'm really interested to see how Phil Hawes does here, because of his kind of trajectory going kind of backwards and forwards. You give him the opportunity and he might not rise to the task. So just from that side alone, I'm really interested in this fight, and I'm really interested to see if Phil Hawes can really pull this out, because when you look at him fight, especially in his last UFC fight, man, he came out like a bat out of hell, and he put him away quick time. So more of that, please, Mr. Phil Hawes.
Yeah, definitely. You're obviously seeing it from another side here, man. You think Amavov is going to take the dub here? How do you see it going?
You know what? I totally agree with Praf. There's so many ways this fight can go, but the weirdest thing I find is that Phil Hawes is this prospect. He's right. He seems to be pushed every time he's fighting. And when I went to go and look at how old Phil Hawes was, he's 32 years old.
Yeah.
He's not the youngest of prospects, especially in the middleweight division. Maybe at heavyweight, you can see these guys go up into their 40s, and some heavyweights prime tends to be around that 34 sort of region, right? With Phil Hawes, it's a weird one. Now, his last loss came to the Cuban Missile Crisis in Julian Marquez that we just saw this weekend. It was a loss by a head kick KO. But the thing about Phil Hawes, he's a wrestler, right? But he's a wrestler that does not come out and wrestle. He comes out and he throws bombs. This guy has a lot of power. No doubt he could end anyone in that first round. Now, my question is, what happens after that first round? And this is where I believe that Nasruddin Amavov is the more complete martial artist. And it's not just that he's better at wrestling and striking and jiu-jitsu. It's the fact that he puts it all together. On top of that, has great cardio, will go for 3 rounds and will be in your face. He may lose that early round. He has great footwork as well. I love what Amavov does with his footwork, moving back, and the way that he's able to roll with punches. I really, really like him in this fight. I really like him as an underdog, if I'm totally honest. I'm going to go with Amavov by either decision win, probably, but no, do you know what? No, we're putting all the chips on the table today. We're going to go with another submission. Amavov is going to get the submission win late in the second, early third. I really see that fight going that way. But before I leave, you didn't ask me about English Frank Mir, Tom Aspinall. Everyone's talking about this guy's KO ability. He's great with the hands, but he's also really, really good on the ground. And the man, he does have a striking resemblance to Frank Mir, does he not? Especially for a heavyweight. So yeah, we need to get that moniker going, English Frank Mir, and I'm with all of you. But I think he's going to finish him by submission. First round submission, English Frank Mir, Tom Aspinall.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of these comparisons between fighters. Obviously, Dana White said this whole Grasso is the Mexican Ronda Rousey, and I was like, no, she's not. I don't like people comparing people to other people, because I think they need to make a name for themselves. And I appreciate where you're coming from. He does look like Frank Mir, but at the end of the day, he needs to be Tom Aspinall. Do you know what I mean? And these guys need to be able to strive to be the best version of themselves and not try and replicate or emulate what someone else is doing. But I get where you're coming from the comedic point of view.
When did Alexa Grasso become a Mexican Ronda Rousey? Is she judo tossing bitches and arm barring them?
I don't know. I don't know where that came from. I don't know.
All right, Dana. All right, Uncle Dana.
Exactly.
As far as I was aware, that Alexa Grasso was the girl that could bang. She surprised me with her grappling ability. I would never have compared her to Ronda Rousey before that fight, and not even afterwards. And I get exactly what you're saying about not comparing. For me, it's more he looks a little bit like Frank Mir. I've got that old school sort of chin fluff going on, that Frank Mir-esque chin fluff as well. So I'm repping it for Tom Aspinall. We're going to get it going. It's going to be a great weekend for the Brits.
Yeah, and a great weekend for prospects as well. Obviously, we've got Luis Pena is fighting on the weekend. Prath, you're going to talk to us a little bit more in depth about what is going on with that fight, right?
Yes, man. Really, really love this fight. One of the fights on this card that really, really stood out to me. Both kind of known names. Luis Pena coming off of a loss to Karma Worthy. But apart from that, he's been kind of bouncing wins and losses back and forth. For me, Luis Pena has always kind of been a prospect. He was originally from the Ultimate Fighter. I believe it was I want to say it was the Joanna season, I think, of the Ultimate Fighter. I'm not too sure. But when he came from that, he went... Which one was it?
DC and Stipe.
DC and Stipe, because after he came off of Tough, he went and trained at AKA, and I think that was a thing that kind of made him a prospect, was that he was training under the kind of guys of Daniel Cormier and Javier Mendez and things like that. And now he trains out of American Top Team, and with the facility there and the people and the bodies that he has there, I can see massive improvements coming from Luis Pena. Maybe not in this fight, but in the next couple of fights going forward. I think Luis Pena is really going to be able to absorb the knowledge from ATT, but also have the bodies to spar at ATT as well. So for me, Luis Pena is a great prospect. The other person that you want to look at here is Drakkar Klose. The other thing that's also notable about both of these guys here is Luis Pena is 27 years old. Drakkar Klose is 32 years old. And with Drakkar Klose, they've always kind of considered him a prospect, but he's 32 years old. So technically he should be in his prime. The one thing as well that really stands out to me about Drakkar's career record is that he is mostly won by decision here. Luis Pena having a couple of TKOs, having some submissions and things like this, having a real diversity and variety in this game. Drakkar Klose, sorry, I just lost my train of thought there, but Drakkar Klose trains at the MMA lab under John Crouch, Ben Henderson, and he's got some great training partners as well, and very, very smart people around him that are really guiding him to be better versions of himself. And the last loss that he had was obviously coming off of that incredible win for Beneil Dariush, but I think again that is a very learnable experience. He had Beneil hurt, and kind of rushed in for the finish there. And I think those are the things that you really learn. And you can kind of almost say the same thing about Gilbert Burns there. He almost looked like he was about to rush in for that finish. And then, Kamaru got his composure back and was able to kind of ride out the storm. And that's exactly what Beneil Dariush did there in that last fight. But if that isn't a learning experience, I don't know what is. You went in for the kill and you ultimately got finished. And I think that's what you usually see, right? You either win by knockout or you get finish or you lose by decision, right? I think that's what Chael says. So for me, what I would probably say in terms of who's going to win here, I would probably put a little bit of my money on Drakkar. Just proven in terms of the amount of decisions he's won means that he has the time in the octagon to really develop himself. And I feel like, coming off of a hard loss like that, you really come back like a bat out of hell in your next fight. So I'm really expecting Drakkar here to I do expect him to go for another decision here. I would love to see him get a finish, and I think that would really bolster his credibility within those rankings. But yeah, so W for Drakkar Klose here, and it's probably going to be by decision.
Yeah, no,
as much as I don't want it to be.
Yeah, no, I can see it going that way. Sorry, Luis Pena obviously is very young, as you say, but he's had a very mixed bag of results coming out. But with these guys that are kind of like the mid-20s, late 20s, they're still so young in their careers, Like we saw Macy Barber at the weekend, we spoke about it, and her being obviously very, very early in her 20s, she still has so much to learn. And it's nice to see these fighters be matched up against people that are a little bit higher than them in the ranking system outside of the top 15, but not too far in. Do you know what I mean? I feel like obviously with the Macy Barber thing, she was put up against someone that was just going to outclass her from start to finish. But I think this is a very, very evenly matched fight, and the whole card is just full of very, very well matched fights. I think the UFC are getting very, very good at putting people together and thinking, you know what, this will be tough for both of them. And there is no real clear winner, because Rodolfo was a clear winner at the weekend, but then naturally he wasn't. So that's fantastic matchmaking as well by the UFC. George,
I think so just a quick one as well, just to finish up that, just to put a little bow tie on that. I do think that Luis Pena is almost a Macy Barber in the sense that they want to propel him forward. Let's give him a tough fight. Does he get through Drakkar Klose? Drakkar Klose was matched up with Beneil Dariush before, who was in the top 10, top 15, right? So that would really propel Luis Pena to let's take on some of these higher ranked lightweights and stuff like that. So yeah.
No, definitely.
That was my last little bit.
Definitely. No, I'm with you. George, who's in the George's Crush corner this week, or have we already spoken about him? It was Tom Aspinall, right? Or is there another good-looking man on the card?
And I wanted to give it to Tom Aspinall, British prospect, you've got to put him in Crush Corner. I almost went for the main man on the card, but it's got to be Tom Aspinall, for Crush Corner this week. So, hopefully the beautiful man himself will have a beautiful performance and win this weekend.
Nah, definitely. He's a good-looking kid as well. He's a bit more but he's better looking than Frank Mir, I think.
I think it's the hair, right?
That's it. It's got to be the hair.
Is that natural? Is that a perm? I want to know.
It's got to be a perm, right? Surely. It looks too good. It looks too good to not be.
You're kind of overlooking the best man on the card, if I'm totally honest. The best man on the card, Eddie Wineland. It depends what comes out, what sort of mustache he might be rocking, but Eddie Wineland, that's a handsome man. That's my man crush. I just want to put that one out there. Or the Black Beast, Derek Lewis, always up on my shelf. That is a handsome man.
Yeah, and his balls they tend to be hot as well. We'll get straight into that then. We'll get straight into the main event because this is going to be, we spoke about this before, and it's going to be a strange one for the heavyweight division because these guys are going to be wanting to push forward and go for that title, but there's a lot of people stuck at the top, and I don't think it will be, and it won't be this year that anyone's going to fight for this title out of these two gentlemen, for instance, because as soon as Stipe and Ngannou fight, then John Jones is naturally going to want the winner of that. And then you're kind of looking 3, 6, 9 months down the line, depending on injuries as well, especially in the heavyweight division. These guys throw absolute cannons at each other. So the injuries are usually very high in these bouts. But yeah, I see this. It's going to either, as we know, it's going to be a wrestle fuck from Blaydes, or it's going to be a one-punch KO from Lewis. I think that's where most people are going to go for this because Lewis has obviously been dragged to the ground before by the likes of DC, stuff like that. He's susceptible to a very heavy wrestling game. But looking at Blaydes' previous record, Volkov, JDS, Willis, and Reem and Hunt. So, he's been fighting some serious contenders over the past couple of years, But George, how do you see it going, man?
Well, personally, I can't see anything other than a Curtis Blaydes victory in this fight. Lewis is a fan favorite, but I'm just not sure he's got the skill set to trouble Curtis Blaydes. I mean, it's a pretty clear wrestler versus striker matchup. And when I think about it, I can't remember too many times where Blaydes ever really falls too far behind on the scorecards, and as he's fighting, and he has dominated, like you just said, high level strikers like JDS and like Mark Hunt, both guys who Derek Lewis has lost to. I don't know. Some people say that Curtis Blaydes is boring, which could be an argument because he does just wrestle fuck people, but I don't find it to be boring. I think he absorbs damage really well. I think he knows how to win, and I just don't see. I think the gas tank for Derek Lewis is going to run out. I just think that's going to be the problem for him, and I just think that he'll just grind away, and then whoever's reffing will just say to him, "I think that's enough now, Derek. I think you've had your time," and I think it'll be a TKO round 3 for Curtis Blaydes. Just think this is a pretty. I won't say it's routine because Derek Lewis has got some he's got some heavy hands, and if he was to catch Curtis Blaydes, it could be a problem. But I think Curtis Blaydes is just what Curtis Blaydes is really good at what he at wrestling, and so when someone's so good at that and they're able to utilize that quite regularly, I just think that it would just be inevitable again. I just don't think this is a very great matchup for Derek Lewis. I just don't think it's going to end very well, and so for me, definitely Curtis Blaydes TKO round 3.
Yeah, and usually when we see wrestlers come out, as we saw at the weekend, obviously Usman is a predominant wrestler, and we think that, people call him Snoozman and all that kind of stuff, stemming off of what Colby Covington said, but he came out and he threw hands. So this might be a new Curtis Blaydes that we see, and he might come out and start throwing hands and try and bang with Lewis. And as you say, maybe he will spend the first round wrestling him and then take that kind of sting out of Lewis's shots. But we've seen Lewis KO people in the third round, so Prath, how do you see it going? I don't think this is going to go to a submission, but who knows? What do you think?
I think Francis Ngannou has written the blueprint on how to defeat Curtis Blaydes, or did he? I think Francis just got quite lucky in some of the exchanges here with Curtis Blaydes, and I think Curtis Blaydes, since that fight, has become very, very defensively sound, and I think that's what's led him to be able to grind out these decisions. Because it's not like he's not being hit. He's being hit very hard by any number of these heavyweights. If they connect, they can put you to sleep, right? So I think Curtis has become a little bit more defensively sound. I think his wrestling has improved in the sense that how does someone wrestling improve if they're predominantly a wrestler? Well, his single leg entries have improved. His body lock takedowns have improved. His on the ground, he isn't as stationary as he once was, right? He doesn't just sit in one place. And that's one of the things that we've mentioned many times on this show. When someone takes someone down and just holds the position, that can often lead to those boring fights. But I think Curtis has learned over the years, and I think the real turning point for that was the Overeem fight that he managed to finish. And I think that was really an eye-opening experience for him, more so than anybody else, right? We kind of know that a heavyweight is capable of destruction if they just give him enough of space and time and things like this, right? But I think what Curtis Blaydes learned from that is that he is a finisher and that he can grind people out, but I think he can also control them and finish them in a way that doesn't allow them to be able to, I don't think they will be. I think Derek Lewis's gas tank will go first, and once his gas tank is gone, I think Blaydes will probably put the finish on him. So I will probably say that he will finish him maybe second round, maybe third round. I think Lewis in his past has often as well. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but he almost plays possum. He'll take a shot and pretend like he's hurt and then unload like a massive shot. I think he did it on like Travis Brown. I think he did it on a few different people. And I think that's another thing that makes people love Derek Lewis as well, because not only is his out of ring promo amazing when he's on Instagram, when he's in the ring, he's obviously very intelligent, very creative with what he comes up with, especially in the heat of the moment. But I think if he's been practicing his takedown defense, that's nothing that's going to help him in this fight. You don't just learn takedown defense over one fight camp. And I think Derek Lewis is someone that's very easy to take down. You wouldn't think because he's a bear of a human being, but he seems to be susceptible to the trips. I think he's susceptible to the body lock as well. So what I do see happening here is Curtis getting him up against the cage, body lock, takedown, and then finish him like the mounted position. I think he'll just rain down strikes, TKO him, ref will come in, take him out.
Yeah, no, definitely, man, definitely. Shug, you obviously got the man himself, the Black Beast, behind you. But do you think he's getting a win this weekend?
Do you know what? Straight off the bat, no. I think that George is bang on. I think third round TKO by Curtis Razor Blaydes. Now, what we need to do is first of all, let's stop with this rhetoric that Curtis Blaydes is boring, that he's just a decision fighter. He's had 14 wins and only 4 of those are decision wins. 2 of those are against Mark Hunt and Alexander Volkov, 2 of the best in the game at heavyweight. This man knows how to finish people. The difference is he's a wrestler. So when you're up against the Francis Ngannou's of this world and the Derek Lewises they will be facing this weekend, he isn't just going to stand and bang with them. He isn't stupid. He's got a really great game plan. But what I love about Curtis Blaydes is when he's on the ground is he throws these hellacious elbows. They are incredible from ground and pound, and so much power and force goes into them. He doesn't stop moving. The only thing that I did worry about in that Volkov fight was he did start to gas, and noticeably so. And Volkov could have taken over that fight at any moment. I feel like he got very lucky there. I do not see that Derek Lewis will have a cardio advantage over Curtis Blaydes. So, like you say, he needs to go out there swinging. And I'm happy to see whatever happens in this fight. It's going to be fun to see whose game plan is going to work. Like you say, Francis Ngannou is the guy that's beat Curtis Blaydes. He has 2 losses on his record. One's a doctor's stoppage against Francis Ngannou, where it was a more even fight than the record would suggest. Francis Ngannou was clearly having the better of him on the feet, but also this was Francis Ngannou where he could not defend a takedown. So yeah, that first fight was much closer than the second. But Curtis Blaydes, he's definitely one to watch out for. If he keeps doing what he's doing, he will get a title shot in the future. You're right, it won't happen this year. But if he keeps doing what he's doing, you can't say no to a man like that dominant. This could be the future of heavyweight. I see Curtis Blaydes third round TKO by elbows, ground and pound.
Yeah, nice. It seems like we're all pretty much on the same page there. But the future of heavyweight, I think George would heavily disagree with you there. He's pretty high on Cyril Gane, aren't you, man?
I do love Cyril, big Cyril.
Got a huge fight coming up against.
I assure you, the 20 on the build up to the fight, Cyril Gane will be in Crush Corner.
You know what? I don't blame you. He'll be in mine as well. Yeah, Cyril Gane.
Yeah.
That he's got some skills. I'd like to see what he's got to show against Rosenstruck. I'd like to see if he actually keeps it on the feet and sort of clinches him back to the cage, or if he uses his wrestling more, because Cyril Gane is one hell of a wrestler. He also does train out of France, like you say, with Francis Ngannou in the past, so he knows how to pack a punch and he knows how to take one. This is going to be a really fun fight to see as well. I look forward to seeing that one.
Definitely.
Just one last thing I wanted to touch on with Curtis Blaydes and Derek Lewis is Curtis Blaydes. I just looked it up. Curtis Blaydes is 29 years old. I did not know that. He looks like he's 36. That's saying that Derek Lewis is 36 years old and he is every bit of 36 years old. So I actually, it was quite funny when you said he was the future of heavyweight division. I was like, no way, this guy's like in his 40s. He's 29 years old. Mm-hmm. So yes, I do agree. In the next 2 to 3 years, he is going to be an absolute monster.
And you could
definitely argue that Curtis Blaydes hasn't hit his prime yet.
No, exactly. We were speaking earlier about how heavyweights hit their prime around that age of 34 years old. A lot of heavyweights really do hit their best. If you look at Stipe, even DC got the heavyweight strap in his 40s, but the Randy Couture's of this world. But at heavyweight, I really do think that between the ages of 32 and 36 years old, that's probably where you're at your physical prime within that division. You really are. So yeah, so much to come from Curtis Blaydes. Really exciting. And Derek Lewis, always fun to watch and always fun to listen to. So it's going to be a great card. It's one of those sleeper cards, isn't it, guys, where a lot of people might not know the names, but you know there's going to be some great fights in there because of it. People looking to prove something.
Yeah, absolutely. We always say about this, and on the prelims, for instance, these guys are going to be fighting for 10 and 10. They're going to be fighting for their lives, their livelihoods, putting food on the table. And they're not on the pay-per-view cards when they're getting a chunk of that either. They're really going out there and just putting it all on the line for pennies in the big scheme of things. But, staying on the topic of the heavyweight division, I think there will be a changing of the guard over the next couple of years, especially over the next kind of 18 months to 2 years. There's so much movement in the heavyweight division. And as I've spoken about a million times, and it's boring now, I do not want to see fighters coming in at 265. I don't want to see them coming in at 265 and have to cut weight. These guys need to understand that you need to be coming in at 245, 240 and looking good and having cardio. And, Derek Lewis has said himself after a couple of fights, I need to hit the treadmill. Yes, you do. Hit the fucking treadmill. Hit the road. Go and do your road work. Go and run outside. Do a couple of miles in the morning before you hit the gym, hit the bag, man. Yeah, that kind of shit just pisses me off. But ending the show on that.
I think you have a point to an extent, because when you see the Overeem, for example, Overeem came out and Overeem looked out of shape. I don't believe that was Overeem's chin. I don't think that was Overeem's skill set. Obviously, Volkov looked amazing, but Overeem looked out of shape. And that is the issue with not having to worry about that weight cut. Maybe that stops the mentality of being in shape, being in top shape, and making sure you're ready for the dance. I think that can be an issue sometimes, yeah. And maybe that might be Arlovsky's issue this weekend. I'd like to see what Arlovsky comes out looking like, and if he's still dedicated to the game. But yeah, I see your point that you got there, Connor.
Yeah,
I see your point as well. I think Connor's actually said about this before. Conor McGregor, when he fought at 170, I feel like his preparations at 155 are really good because he has to cut weight to get to that kind of stage where he's mentally there and physically there. And when you fight at 170, you don't have to worry about that, right? So when he came into the weigh-ins for Nate Diaz, he looks very vascular, but also just is happy. He looks happy when he's up there. When he's at 155, he looks pissed off because he's had to cut all this weight to get there. And I think that can be said for a lot of these guys here. Now, the counterpoint I would give to yourself, Connor, is that some people's frames do kind of, like if you look at a Stefan Struve and Alex Volkov, who is like, near on 7 foot, sometimes they do have to cut maybe a tiny bit of weight to get to 265, but that's a structural difference, not a laziness.
Mm.
And I think I do agree with you where some of these guys here, especially when they're, I would say like when they're like 300 or so and they have to get to 265, it's very lazy at that point, man. And I think that when you do look at those guys, and I'm not generalizing, there's definitely, most of the 265 guys outside of, off the top of my head, Greg Hardy, I would say are all just overweight guys that are fighting at, 300 pounds and cutting down to 265, a Tai Tuivasa, a Mark Hunt, a Roy Nelson, those kind of guys. So yeah, I completely agree with you. And I do think cutting weight to an extent is a stupid thing to be doing, but also I think it really brings out that dog in you. And I think it really allows you to get into that kind of visceral fight mode. So yeah.
And I think DC brought it up best. He said, you'll never get rid of the weight cuts. It's part of the game. It's part of the sport. It's ingrained into it. It's like trying to take away punches or kicks from MMA. It's not going to happen. But there are levels to it, and that's what we need to find out where them levels are and what we need to be doing. I think that Praf has a really great point, as in it's not even just the near 7 footers. There's a people like Francis Ngannou. Before he had a decent strength and conditioning routine, that man was cut into 265. Nowadays, I think he comes in the 250s in his last fight, but yeah, it is hard when you are at that size to maintain that weight. But then there's the total other side of it where you've got the Roy Nelsons, the Mark Hunts, and the Tai Tuivasas that are out of shape, let's be honest.
I would disagree. Just a little quick thing. I would disagree in the sense that weight cutting has essentially been eliminated through One Championship. If you look at what One Championship have done with the way that they've monitored the weight cutting procedures, I do believe they essentially just bumped everyone up a weight class above. So Demetrius Johnson, instead of fighting at 25, fights at 35. And I think he weighs generally at like 138. So like that should be the way that you're doing it. You shouldn't be cutting all this water out and then taking head kicks the next day. Like ideally in a situation, they should kind of be looking at what One Championship are doing. But I think that's definitely a long conversation for a different day that we can dig into there.
Yeah, I'm about to say it's a very long conversation because you can go into the same with steroid use, because as long as there's someone that's fixing it, there's someone that's already ahead of the game. And that's what's happening. There's always going to be someone. That's how life works. But yeah, it's a very long conversation, that one.
No, absolutely. And that's one that we will be having on a separate occasion. We will be producing a what does it take to be the GOAT episode, as well as a what do we think about weight cutting episode, and I think they will be very, very long episodes that we all have counteracting agreements and disagreements on. But for now, we are done with this card. There is a lot of other fighters on that card, but like I said, we were just going to break down the main points that we were excited about. As always, thank you very much to the co-hosts of the show, George, the funny casual, Prath, the eloquent analyst, and Suga C. Thank you very much for jumping on as the special guest this week, man.
Anytime.
No worries at all. All right, until next time, we'll be doing the pre-fight, obviously, the post-fight of this card as well. So hit us up for that. And as always, follow us on social media at fightingtalk2 on Twitter, the same on Instagram. Hit like, hit subscribe, and don't forget to tell your friends.